This lesson is titled Momentum. So we'll start with our key terms: mass, velocity, vector, scalar, and momentum. I'd then like you to attempt the recall tasks. State the scientific units of mass and velocity, and recall the definitions of vector and scalar. And then consider which will do more damage to a wall: a golf ball moving at 100 meters per second or a bowling ball moving at 10 meters per second. Pause the video now if you need to write down any notes. So let's look at our key terms. We have mass, which is the amount of matter an object is made from. Velocity is a vector quantity representing the speed and direction of an object. Vector is a quantity with both magnitude and direction, answering one of your recall questions there. A scalar is a quantity with only magnitude. And finally, momentum is the product of the mass and the velocity of an object. If you want to write any of these down, pause the video now. So we're going to be looking at an equation in a moment with the following symbols. Mass is represented with a lowercase m. Velocity is represented with a lowercase v, and momentum will be represented with a lowercase p. The units of mass are kilograms, the units of velocity are meters per second, and the units of momentum are kilogram meters per second. So let's look at our equation. Now this is an equation that you must remember. This will be on the higher paper, so all of those doing the higher paper must remember this equation. Momentum is the product of mass and velocity. So I used that word, the product of, earlier. Now a product is when we multiply two numbers together. So it's a mathematical term. Just like the sum of a few numbers is when you add those numbers together, the product of some numbers is when we multiply them together. So if you know the equation here, you also know the definition. The definition and the equation are the same thing. So let's look at some calculations. If we want to calculate momentum, a mass of 300 kilograms has a velocity of 75 meters per second. Calculate the momentum. Well, step one, as always, is to write down what you know. We know mass is 300 kilograms and we know velocity is 75 meters per second. Step two is to write down the equation we're going to use. Step three is to substitute in the numbers. And step four is to write the answer with correct units. Pause the video now to copy these steps down. Moving on to the next question. A mass of 1,000 kilograms has a velocity of 5 meters per second. Calculate the momentum. I've given you steps 1, 2, and 3, so copy those down and then complete step 4 for yourself. Next question. A mass of 12,000 kilograms has a velocity of 3 meters per second. Calculate the momentum. I've given you steps 1 and 2, so copy those down and then complete for yourselves steps 3 and 4. Now we have a mass of 75,000 kilograms, has a velocity of 5 meters per second. Calculate the momentum. So step 1 is to write down what you know. Step 2 is to write down the equation. Step 3 is to substitute in the numbers. And step 4 is to write the answer with correct units. And our final question to calculate momentum. A mass of 4,000 kilograms has a velocity of 8 meters per second. Calculate the momentum. This time, do steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 yourselves. Now instead, if we want to calculate the velocity, there is an extra step. So, an object with a mass of 8 kilograms has a momentum of 400 kilogram meters per second. Calculate the velocity of the object. Well, step 1 is to write down what we know. We know that the momentum is 400 kilogram meters per second and the mass is 8 kilograms. Step 2 is to write down the equation. Step 3 is to substitute in the numbers. But now we notice the v is not on its own. We need to make v the subject of the formula. So to get to step 4, which is to rearrange, we're going to make v the subject of the formula. It is 8 multiplied by v, and so we must do the inverse operation by dividing by 8. That gives us v equals 400 divided by 8. The answer therefore is 50 meters per second. So step 4 is to rearrange to make v the subject of the formula, and step 5 is to write the answer with correct units. Pause the video now and copy these steps down. Next, an object with a mass of 2 kilograms has a momentum of 50 kilogram meters per second. Calculate the velocity of the object. Step 1, write down what you know. Step 2, write down the equation. Step 3, substitute in the numbers. Step 4, rearrange to make v the subject of the formula. And step 5, write down the answer with correct units. Copy down steps 1 to 4 and complete step 5 yourselves. Next, an object with a mass of 8 kilograms has a momentum of 20,000 kilogram meters per second. Calculate the velocity of the object. Steps 1 to 3 have been done for you. Copy those down and then complete steps 4 and 5. Next question. An object with a mass of 7 kilograms has a momentum of 140 kilogram meters per second. Calculate the velocity of the object. Copy down steps 1 and 2 and complete step 3, which is to substitute in the numbers, step 4, which is to make v the subject of the formula, and step 5, which is to write down the answer with correct units. And then finally complete this velocity calculation yourselves. An object of mass 6 kilograms has a momentum of 12,000 kilogram meters per second. Calculate the velocity. Complete steps 1 to 5 in your notes. Now lastly, we might want to be calculating the mass. So this time, an object with a momentum of 400 kilogram meters per second has a velocity of 20 meters per second. Calculate the mass of the object. Step 1, write down what you know. Step 2, write down the equation you're going to use. Step 3, substitute in the numbers. And step 4, let's make m the subject of the formula. So since it's m times by 20, we must divide by 20 to get m on its own. And finally, write down the answer with correct units. This time, an object with a momentum of 5,000 kilogram meters per second has a velocity of 800 meters per second. Calculate the mass of the object. Copy down steps 1 to 4 and complete step 5 yourselves. Next, an object with a momentum of 1,100 kilogram meters per second has a velocity of 130 meters per second. Calculate the mass of the object. Copy down steps 1 to 3 and complete 4 and 5 yourselves. Next question. An object with a momentum of 2,400 kilogram meters per second has a velocity of 6.4 meters per second. Calculate the mass. Step 1 has been completed for you. Complete steps 2 through 5. And finally, an object with a momentum of 800 kilogram meters per second has a velocity of 0.64 meters per second. Calculate the mass of the object. Complete steps 1 to 5 yourselves. And finally, back to our original question. The mass of a bowling ball is around 5 kilograms and the mass of a golf ball is around 50 grams. So let's consider which will do more damage to the wall. If we base this on our understanding of momentum, we will realize that 5 kilograms times by 10 meters per second is going to be 50 kilogram meters per second. Whereas a golf ball with only 50 grams, so that's 0.05 kilograms, multiplied by the 100 meters per second, gives us 5 kilogram meters per second. So we have the golf ball with 5 kilogram meters per second and the bowling ball with 50 kilogram meters per second. The bowling ball is going to do far more damage to the wall.